So this week's discussion board was to go over the four cognitive biases that were discussed in the textbook. So the four that were discussed were confirmation, representativeness, illusion of control, and escalating commitment. So we were asked to give like four different personal examples of how we can kind of tie that in. So for confirmation, I said, I thought like a great example for, just the general like public is politicians and our opinions of them, whether that be presidents or vice presidents, governors, or whatever. I think it's very easy for us to think that our guy or whatever president we support can't do wrong. And everyone, obviously, as we know, like no one's perfect. We all sin. And so I think that's just a great example of, in our eyes, we think nobody can do wrong, and so it's tough for us to admit when maybe a politician we support does something wrong. For representativeness, I said as a consumer, like one bad experience at a restaurant or business, whether that be the first time you go or even if you've been going, but especially I think, if it's the first time you go, bad experience at the beginning, you might never go back. And so I think that's a great example of just how you let results, one result kind of alter your entire opinion of that. For illusion of control, I said for personally, so I'm on the men's golf team at DBU, and I thought, a good example that sometimes, I can relate to is I think sometimes it's easy, especially this year, we have a lot of new guys on our team, transfers and freshmen, and so sometimes it's kind of easy to, especially at the beginning of the year, to kind of expect that, my spot um, is kind of, that I have my spot just because, I've been here like I'm only in my second year here, but I've been here longer than obviously all of our transfers and freshmen. So I think it's easier to have that mindset sometimes, and I have to kind of remind myself, you got to we got to work for our spots always. And then for escalating commitment, this was kind of, I think it's a good example, but I think a little bit funny too. But I thought about like when I'm playing blackjack or something like that, or just at a casino playing games, and if I'm down money, putting more money on the table, you're putting more financial commitment to something that might already be struggling. And so I think generally, obviously, in the context of how we're learning, it's more in business, but I thought that was kind of a good example of, you're down and you're putting more money into something. Thanks.